Energy. 8 hours of sleep. Stress-free revision. Are all things you don't have as a student? So to make life that little bit easier, here are my recommendations for tech for students. Coming from a former student, these are things that either added value to my life or made my life a little bit easier. And the items I'll be talking about are a mirrorless camera, noise-cancelling headphones, a Kindle, a monitor, and an honorable mention, an iPad. That's all. Stick around if you want to hear why I've chosen these things. I'll leave timestamps for the video, and feel free to skip around to whatever section you feel is the most relevant to you. Also, I'll leave links to everything I cover down in the description below. Now, before I start, I'm not going to talk about either having a laptop or a phone, because I think we can both agree those are just about as close to essential as you can possibly get for a student. And also those two aren't too interesting. I actually made a video about best budget laptops for students. I'll link that up here. But those two things in general aren't too interesting. So let's get into it. All right, so starting off with my first recommendation, a mirrorless camera with a decent lens. The first ever mirrorless camera I ever had was the Sony a7 Mark III. But in all honesty, for a student, even a Sony a5000 or an a5100 will serve perfectly fine. You don't need full frame straight off the rip. There's a YouTuber and content creator called Yahya Busir. I'll leave his channel in the description below. He started off, I think, if I'm not mistaken, with an a5000 or a5100, and you should see some of the shots he was able to capture. Absolutely incredible. An a5000 or a5100 can cost as little as $200 in good condition on eBay. Now, the reason I put a mirrorless camera in this recommended tech for students video is, sure, iPhones can take some fantastic images. In fact, nowadays it can be even more difficult to discern between a smartphone image or a dedicated camera image. But there's still no denying that an APS-C sized camera sensor looks much, much better, especially in video. If you want to step up, and I recommend, if you can, to go for a step up, I'd recommend the Sony a6000, which is still quite a few years old, but it's still a great stepping stone from the a5000, a5100. The A5 series I would only really recommend if it's something you're just looking into seeing whether it's something you want to invest in. The a6000 even is quite a few years old at this stage, but being so old means that you can find some for really, really good prices. If you want something a bit more enthusiast level, go with the a6400. Incredible 4K footage, great dynamic range, and it's essentially a smaller brother of the a7 III. In fact, the a6400 is my B cam. It's what I use for all my B-roll shots, and it's what I'm shooting on right now, just to prove the point. I take the a6400 with me as my travel camera. Being smaller than full frame means it fits and slots into all of my bags really easily and still captures incredible photos and stunning 4K footage. Now, lens-wise, the good thing about APS-C is that lenses are so much cheaper. But then again, cheaper is relative, and for students, even APS-C lenses, decent APS-C lenses might be out of reach. So I'd recommend sticking with the kit lens that comes with the camera, the 16-50 kit lens or the 18-55, which you can find for circa $50 on eBay. A step up from those would be, I would say, the 50mm f1.8 prime lens, and a step up from that would be any of the Sigma f1.4 trio. Those are a huge improvement over the 16-50 or 18-55 kit lenses, and I would recommend saving up for those. But when you're starting out or just figuring out whether this is something you want to invest in, want to pursue in the future, the kit lens is absolutely fine. And the reason I say this, there are so many fantastic videos on YouTube made with just a Sony base camera and the kit lens. Warren Buffett says that his house was the third best investment he's ever made. He bought it back in 1989, I think, for $30,000, and it's now worth $1.4 million. But his reasoning isn't due to its value increase. In fact, if he'd put that same $30,000 into the S&P 500 index back in 1989, it would now be worth over $3 million. He says the reason for that being the memories he made in that house and the people he got to spend time with in that house. And that's sort of the same lens I look, well, no pun intended, that's sort of the same lens I look at my mirrorless camera purchase. For example, noise cancelling headphones. So if you live in a house like I do, there's always something going on. Kids running around screaming, mum calling you for dinner, dad yelling at you because you left a glass outside of the dishwasher. I digress. Even if you're living on campus, in general, there are a lot of distractions around. And that's why I recommend a pair of noise cancelling headphones for students. You could be in any environment, a cafe, a library, commuting on the train. And if you need some peace and quiet, you need to be able to shut everything off. You can. Now listen, I've seen videos that recommend Apple AirPods Max, Sony WHMX5s, Bose QC. As a student, I definitely didn't want to spend $200, $300, $400 on a pair of headphones. I remember trying the Sony WHMX3s in a store in King's Cross when I was at university. It was one morning before one of my lectures, and I remember thinking they're good, but nothing really stood out about them to me. They were plasticky. Noise cancellation was obviously great. At the time, it was class leading, and they were really comfortable, but I didn't really understand the hype. For students, I'd recommend the Soundcore Q20s. These are the ones I bought back after a lot of research and trial and error back in university. They have great battery life, great connectivity. They come with a soft carry case. And the only issue I ever had with these was the micro USB charging, which I believe they've updated now in the Soundcore Q20Is. In fact, from a student's point of view, I had some issues with them. The ear cups, the ear pads had worn out, and I reached out to Anchor Soundcore at the time, and they sent me a free pair of replacement ear pads for free. So from a student value proposition point of view, these are absolutely incredible. These ended up proving invaluable during my study sessions, just to drown out the noise of anything. In particular, they were great on the tube. I could just stick them on, turn noise cancellation on, active noise cancellation, and get some reading done in peace. Sometimes during lunch, I could be in a cafe, in a restaurant, in a hotel lobby, just studying. And if it starts to get busy and noisy, then I can just put these on and turn on noise cancellation. And I'm back in my studying zone, which is such an invaluable superpower to have. I like the Q20 so much that now I have the Soundcore Q30s with me, which I take with me when I'm traveling. On a day-to-day basis, I end up using the AirPods 2 Pros, which are just a smaller package, easier to deal with, and their noise cancellation is obviously not on the same level, but absolutely possible. And they're also so easy to use with my iPhone, but that's just another set of considerations you don't want to have to worry about as a student. The Kindle. All right, coming in at number 3 is the Kindle. Now, I'll be honest, at first I was skeptical. All right, I'll be honest. At first I was skeptical about the whole idea or concept of a Kindle. My thinking was, what do I need this for? I can just read on my phone, or I can read a physical book. What do I need a Kindle for? I don't need this extra piece of tech in my life. I was wrong. This is the Kindle Paperwhite, but the base Kindle should be perfectly fine for students as well. Firstly, having this has massively reduced the friction for me to read. I think this is a point Ali Abdal mentioned in one of his videos a long time ago, and I've definitely found that to be the case. Reading is inherently good for knowledge and personal development, but quite often it's easier to just find yourself on your phone and doom scrolling Instagram or TikTok. This thing just makes it way easier to read. This small little thing can hold thousands and thousands of books. So if I happen to finish one or get bored of one, then I can just read another. I have this with me all the time on my commute to and from work. And even if the tube is completely packed, I can use it one-handed. I don't have to carry around a physical book with me. Now, something I do want to start doing is reading before bed, because it doesn't strain the eyes or disrupt circadian rhythm like a phone screen does. And at the moment, I will admit, I just end up watching something before falling asleep. Now, in general, you want reading to be as seamless and easy a task as possible. Reading is a cognitive stimulant. It helps with knowledge acquisition. Studies have even shown it to reduce stress in certain areas. And for me, a large portion of my vocabulary comes from the fact I grew up reading. If you're interested in the book I'm currently reading, it's called A First-Rate Madness. I'll leave it linked down in the description below. Monitor. Item number 4 on the productivity and efficiency side of things is a monitor. To go alongside your laptop screen, a second screen just adds so much more productivity to your studying or revision workflows. I think you can see behind me I use a ultra-wide monitor for editing and research, and I have just out of shot there a second monitor that I use for coding and gaming. Now, having a monitor that you can connect your laptop to makes multitasking much easier for things like taking notes while watching a lecture recording, for researching on one screen while writing an essay or working on a project on another. For me, a monitor was just one of those things that added so much value in my studying workflow and being able to streamline my revision sessions. It's an absolute game changer. You're almost not confined to the small 13 or 15 inch screen of a laptop. There's just so much more real estate for you to work with. My first ever monitor was an old 19 inch HP monitor. Nowadays, with how fast technology has progressed, you can find HDMI monitors for $50, $60, $100 on Amazon. The HP monitor I had was 19 inches big, which was fine, but for university I went with a larger Samsung 4K 32 inch panel, which offered me so much real estate. That was quite good. Being 4K means I could zoom all the way out and still be able to discern letters from one another. Now, as a student, specs don't really matter. 4K, 1080p, 1440p, 60 Hz, 75 Hz, 100 Hz, 240 Hz. That doesn't really matter as a student. That shouldn't be your primary concern. You can find HDMI monitors. Just make sure they're HDMI. You can find HDMI monitors for dirt cheap these days. For my ultra-wide monitor, it has a USB-C port on the back, which I can plug directly into my personal laptop, into my work laptop, and it's daisy-chained to both external monitors. Now, back when I was a student, these are currently connected to my PC, which I have, my gaming PC, which I have underneath my desk. But back when I was a student, I just had my laptop and my monitor. Honorable mention, iPad. And finally, an honorable mention, because I don't think it's essential, but a nice to have, an iPad. The reason I've included an iPad as an honorable mention is because it proved so useful for me when I transitioned from paper note-taking to digital note-taking. Now, I'm hoping to be able to make an entire video on how I used an iPad for digital note-taking at university and why it was so useful. So if that's something you're interested in, make sure you're subscribed for that. But in short, portability, being able to carry around entire semesters and years worth of work, lecture notes, video recordings, exam tests, and papers in a package of this size made student life so much easier. I could note take in different colors, draw graphs and charts with ease, resize and select different bits of information, and this is an important one, screenshot and pull in pictures of academic papers and annotate them freely. And essentially, depending on the note-taking app you use, you just have this enormous canvas to work with. Now, obviously, there's the case to be made where obviously you can make digital notes on a laptop, but in my case, where I was studying a heavily mathematical degree with lots of charts and graphs and models and mathematical formulae, being able to take handwritten notes on OneNote was a game changer. Now, during university, I used the iPad 6th generation, and I'd since upgraded to the iPad Air M1, but I actually made a video on how that was the most useless purchase I've ever made. I'll link that up somewhere here as well. Now, I think it's important to note an iPad, I just used an iPad as a generic term for any sort of tablet. You can take digital notes on any tablet, Microsoft Surface, Galaxy Tab, any touchscreen tablet that you can make OneNote notes on. The reason I use OneNote was so good, it would sync immediately across any device. If I had OneNote open on my monitor and I was writing on my iPad, you could see a couple of seconds later OneNote syncing across and the information appearing on OneNote on all your other devices. And there you have it, 4 tech items, 5 if you count the honorable mention, that I'd recommend you get, whether you're a student or not, but definitely if you're a student. It's important to note that these recommendations come from someone who no longer has to worry about the student budget, and it's entirely possible that hedonic adaptation has increased my risk for expenditure. So take these recommendations with a grain of salt. You don't have to buy the exact brand, the exact product that I've recommended in this video. There's a whole host of other brands and products that will serve the same purpose. If you like this video, be sure to leave a like down below and let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. What things do you agree with for students and what do you disagree with? And even if there's anything I've missed on this list, I have a Graduate Explains playlist, which is aimed at helping students. I have a video titled How I Got a First Class Degree. I'll also link that video up here and down in the description below. That's all for this video. I hope it was useful. Do let me know down in the comments below what other videos you'd like to see. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.